Howard Griffiths from Cardiff appeared on the original series in 1992, and years later, in 2017, he randomly bumped into his date, Bridget Bard, on the tube. Now, he filmed the moment, it went viral, and the pair ended up catching up properly a quarter of a century after their first meeting. Listen to this.
I have just met Bridget from Blind Date. What's your name and where'd you come from?
Oh.
Yeah, Bridget from Epping.
Mi piacerebbe parlare bene l'italiano.
That was it. And Howard Griffiths, you heard his voice there, joins us in the studio now. Good morning, Howard.
Bore da, happy anniversary.
Indeed. What's your name and where'd you come from? That's what I should have said. That's how I should have introduced you.
Hello, Catherine. I'm Howard and I'm from Cardiff County.
Yeah, there we are. Before we go on to the reunion, I want to know how you ended up on Blind Date. Why did you want to do it?
Well, there was a newspaper cutting that I had. They were doing auditions at the Royal Hotel on St Mary Street in Cardiff. So I went along, and it's quite funny because they invited me on the show, but I was booked to go on a holiday to Jamaica with my brother. So I had to phone Blind Date and say, oh, I can't come on the telly, sorry. And they said, why? I said, I'm going to Jamaica. Who with? I said, Lun Polly. They went, no, who are you with? Have you got a wife now? I went, no, my brother. Oh, it's fine. So I ended up going on the programme the following year.
It's brilliant. What was it like? What was Scylla like? What was the whole experience like?
Magical. I would say there was a lot of mystique because they were very strict organising the programme. It was run like a military operation. So when you arrived at the studio, you were taken to the studio at the exact military time. The women that were on the show arrived at the exact time, and you never met. You were kept apart, and we had to sign forms to say that we weren't going to share any of the secrets of the programme with the press. And Scylla herself was just incredible. I loved her. Yeah. What impressed me, we first met just before recording the first show in the wings in the dark, and she came up and she said, oh, you're Howard. Oh, you've spent time living in Buckinghamshire. I've got a house down the road in Gerrard's Cross, and my son Robert is a year younger than you. And then I realised, because it was dark, I thought she was a researcher. And I went, and I had headphones on so I couldn't hear what was going on, like outside the studio. And I went, you're Scylla. She said, don't say too much, keep it spontaneous. We're recording the show now.
What a pro.
Oh, I loved her.
You know the questions, because you always had funny questions to ask the contestants. Did you come up with those yourself? Or?
I did, and I like Celine Dion. It's all coming back to me now. I said, I think stable relationships are for horses. How would you persuade me to take off my blinkers?
That's very good, Howard.
Well,
yes. That's very good. And then you're looking for you're looking for the cringiest answer, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah? And so what was the cringiest answer? Do you remember that?
Well, I said something along the lines of, I'm proud to say that I can pronounce Llanfair Pwllgwyngyllgo, Gerris Gwynrobo, Llantysilio, go, go, go.
Yeah.
What could you say that would impress me? And the girl I ultimately picked could speak Italian because her dad owned a salmon factory.
Oh, that's why you were doing the Italian.
And she went, oh, salamoni, papa. And I'd just been to an Italian restaurant and I went, oh, mi piacerebbe parlare bene l'italiano. And Scylla was weak. And it was just magical. But we thought of our own questions. We actually wrote more, and then they picked the best three. We were involved and we created them.
The thing is, Howard, that now there are millions of TV channels, people are on telly all the time, it doesn't feel like a big deal. Blind Date, when there were 4 channels on television and everybody sat down and everybody watched things together, there was no catch-up. It was a big deal, wasn't it, going on there? The
producers were amazing. They told us after our first programme, we had 16 million viewers. When we went back, the second programme had 17 million viewers. But you're right, there was mainly the BBC's and a couple of channels. We didn't have streaming channels. We didn't have the satellite channels. And it was a destination. People watched Blind Date before going out for a dance on a Saturday.
Of course. We've sort of given it away. You had that reunion, so I assume it didn't quite work out with Bridget, was it?
No,
it didn't quite work out?
Well, she made a confession on the bus because we had a tour bus. We had a holiday to Germany and there were about 9 crew, and on the trip, she took me to the back of the bus and she said, I've got to tell you something. And I went, what have you got to tell me, Bridget? She said, I've got a boyfriend. He's the Italian boy from the Dream Boys, the exotic dancers. I said, well, you should have told the team that. So I went to the front of the bus and told Melinda Rogers, and then Melinda Rogers had something to say. She said, well, you should have told us that you were, you knew an exotic dancer. But what made me laugh, on the bus trip, as we were going to the first location, the researcher said, oh, we've got to cut down on the champagne budget. The bosses have said we're using too much champagne, but it's not going to affect this trip.
Thank you, Howard.
You could stay all programme, but we've got to move on. That was brilliant. Howard Griffiths there, blind date star.
Coming up to 8 o'clock, it's Friday. You're with BBC Radio Wales Breakfast and the news, sport, travel and weather for Wales is our next destination.
This is Radio Wales on BBC Sounds, or ask your smart speaker to play BBC Radio Wales.
BBC News for Wales at 8 o'clock. This is Matthew Webb. More than 80,000